Washington State and Oregon State are a complete mess, but Texas State has something that you should be looking forward to, all right here on the Pac-12 Daily Podcast. What is going on with Washington State? Gavin Hite joining me from Up West Sports, covers the Mariners and Wazoo, and I need it. I absolutely need the help here because I am dumbfounded, Gavin. I have no idea what is going on with Washington State. I thought they were looking in the right direction after the win against San Diego State. They looked good in the Jimmy Rogers really debut, if you will, but the following game, they head to Denton. They take on North Texas. They lose 59-10, 5 turnovers in the first half. And of course, the biggest issue is what's going on with quarterback Jackson Potter. Throws 3 interceptions. We had Julian Duggar, who came in, didn't really look consistent, or did they have the trustworthiness, at least was my viewpoint, from him there. And of course, having Eckhouse come in the second half. Take me through this. What's your thoughts about the quarterback issue, and where do we sit moving forward in year 1 of Rogers?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And also just hitting it right off the bat. All of us fans, we're in the same boat. What the heck just happened? North Texas. Now, granted, I knew they were a respectable program. They got Coach Morris, who was a former Coug. We knew they were going to be air raid. We knew they were going to be in the air. I like our DBs. I liked our situation there. However, I knew they were going to be challenged. They did a really good job of balance. They did a good job of keeping the ground game going. They kept the ball in the air when they had to, and they kind of played that yo-yo on our defense, and they did a really good job of it. Getting to the quarterbacks, said it at the beginning of the year. It was Zevi's job to lose, and it was never Zevi's job to have in Coach Rogers' eyes. So I was a little surprised for the first 3 weeks seeing Jimmy not go with Zevi or even getting any touches. He wasn't even the number 2. I like Jackson Potter. I like Julian Duggar. They're young guys. I think this is the perfect year to groom them to be great next year. They're in that zone to where they could really cast off and be really good next year, and they can get a handful of touches this year. This was Zevi's year. In all honesty, this was Zevi's year, and you saw it at the end of the game. He finished 7 for 10. He found the end zone. It wasn't by air, but it was he put the ball in the end zone. And to be honest, I think Jimmy wasn't going with him because he was worried about him just being strictly air raid and not being able to use his feet. Well, we saw completely different, and we saw experience. That was the big thing. The guy has the resume. He's come from Bryant University, where he was, Big South Player of the Year. That may not be a lot to a lot of people, but it was Player of the Year in FCS football. That's good enough in my book to get an opportunity, especially as a redshirt senior. His eligibility is now either at risk, or I don't know what happens if he doesn't play more than 4 games this year. In the current scope of things, does he get another year? And if he does, it's probably not as a Coug. But if he does, if this is now the counterpoint and we can move forward with Zevi, I'm very curious to see how the rest of this year plays out.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I thought that Zevi deserved it as well. I don't know if deserve is actually the right word, but at least earned it. He didn't look terrible in the Holiday Bowl last year against Syracuse. And you talk about FCS being a Big South Player of the Year. You got to give credit to FCS where FCS is due, because your coach is coming from the FCS ranks into Washington State. So obviously he knows what Zevi can do. Of course, Jackson Potter, he looked decent against San Diego State. I mean, were these concerns really in your mind against San Diego State? At least they weren't right off the bat like they were against North Texas. That's where I guess I'm coming at. I didn't go into this game against North Texas thinking, man, we're going to have to see 3 different quarterbacks and see who's going to be the best one coming out of it when it's all said and done.
No, I didn't see that either. I knew our defense was going to be tested, but the fact that the offense couldn't stay on the field long enough, I think I don't have the exact number in front of me, but the time of possession is very lopsided. So when the defense has to be out there, yeah, the defense ended up giving up 50 plus points, but if you get a little bit more from your offense, that doesn't quite happen. That's another case in point I wanted to make with Zevi Eckhouse. The guy stayed through a lot of turmoil. You lost a head coach. You lost 20, 30 plus players in the portal. The guy stayed faithful to your program, coming from the FCS level. You made a really good point. Jimmy's also coming from that level too. I understand that it doesn't fit your mold of running style or ground game that you're used to at South Dakota State. but you do need experience. When it comes down to it, you had experience and you had somebody who stayed through all that turmoil. And then you saw it there at the end of the game, validating every fan's response and saying, why wasn't it Zevi against Idaho? Why wasn't it Zevi against San Diego State? Which, shout out to Jackson Potter. He figured it out, last week against San Diego State. You saw him, really get prepared for, I think, a next year's, keys to the Ferrari. And granted, at this point, it's more like a Datsun, but it's still like, give this guy a little credit, but also it's still Zevi ball. I'm going to say it again. It's Zevi's ball to lose.
I think you're right. I absolutely think you're right. And this is where I think you meet a weird kind of situation here, Gavin. Hanging out with Gavin Hite here from Up West Sports. Check him out at Up West Sports on Twitter, X, and of course YouTube, all that good stuff. Covers the Mariners and Wazoo. And this is where I got to ask you, because of course you're bringing in Jimmy Rogers, brand new coach. This is a program builder type of scenario here, bringing from the FCS ranks. He brought, I can't even count how many he brought over from the FCS to this program. It's quite a number. I believe it's in the 40s, if I remember correctly. But overall, you got to come. Is this the year where you just build it up? And if so, is that why you're focusing more on Potter, more on Duggar, instead of the senior who is just kind of there? It's a weird situation to be, but do you think we've seen the last of Jackson Potter, or is it potentially we're going to see him potentially start in the Apple Cup this next week?
At this point, I would be very surprised if Jimmy doesn't go with what he saw talent wise. You take the senior title away, take the sophomore title away. If you just go based on talent and what you saw in last week's game, you got to give Zevi the ball. It's his ball to lose. And now you have Potter and you have Duggar, and honestly, Duggar's a little bit more. We're going to use him in certain scenarios, and it gets really obvious what we're going to be doing with Duggar. So once he's on the field, it's like, okay, guess what? They're picking A gap or B gap. Here you go. And he does serve a huge purpose. I'm hoping that they get his arm more involved and that he can be a dual threat guy. The other thing with Jackson Potter, our crew was talking about this behind the scenes. We brought it up in last week's episode, but they would do the handoff where it would be kind of like an RPO, and Jackson Potter would never hold the ball. Even though he had nothing but clear lane in front of him, he would always hand it off to Voorhees or Johnson, and it just shows what they're going to do. You know that they're going to hand the ball off every single time to the running back, and I think that just comes with a lack of experience. I could be wrong, but with this being said, now you look at if Zevi gets the ball going into next week. Now you have to have that conversation with Potter, saying, "Hey, listen, you're still the future. You're still very important to us. We got exposed a little bit last week. We got to work on some things in practice. But before we can put you back in there to start, we do need to see some things change in practice." Now, I'm not behind the scenes. I'm not at practice. I don't know what that looks like at practice. But we see it in the games, right? And it's not there. It's just not there. And this is not an anti-Jackson Potter. I want to make that clear. This is not anti-Jackson Potter. He is going to be very good. And he's going to be very good, I think, starting next year. And you're going to see him ramp up at some point this year, whether it be in a backup role or if he goes off and he's the starting quarterback in the Apple Cup. But that's kind of where, yeah.
And of course, the fact that, the Pac-12 is going to be changing in next year as well. You don't want to treat this like a lame duck year, but because you already brought in a first-year coach in Jimmy Rogers this year before the Pac-12 changes in 2026 with all the new teams, it's almost like you can have a leg ahead. So I would not be shocked if we see Potter or Duggar again very soon, but I'm with you. I think Eckhouse is the answer. The biggest thing that needs to change, though, Gavin, of course, those 5 turnovers, absolutely insane. You cannot have that. I mean, if you limit those turnovers, this isn't a 59-10 final. That's just not the case. They looked a lot better in the second half, and Eckhouse could be some of the reasons that happened, or maybe some garbage time. You go ahead and be that kind of, decision maker, if you will. But of course, you got Washington in Pullman this Saturday. It's 4:30 Pacific time on CBS national television. And look, they beat Colorado State 38-21. Colorado State doesn't look like the best team this year. They lost or almost lost to Northern Colorado, should have lost to Northern Colorado. And then they put 70 points on UC Davis. Take that as you will. How are you feeling about the Apple Cup this year on Saturday?
Nervous because, like you said, I mean, this is a bunch of South Dakota State guys playing in a new level, and not that they didn't deserve to be here. Not that they cannot play at this level. And I want to give a shout out to the defense. I did think they got a little bit exposed last week with the way they can cover guys, the way the defensive line may not be as strong as we want it to be to create pressure on the quarterback. And yeah, Damon Williams he's good. He's going to be very good. And they're going to hit it in the air. They got Jonah Coleman on the ground. I know that they're going to give us a very good game. And I like our defense. I'm a little bit worried on seeing this last game and seeing how we can progress into this next game. Things have to change. If they don't go back to the drawing board this week, it's gonna be a very similar game. That's it, 100%. You're facing one of the better teams in the Northwest. I think they're much stronger than North Texas, and no disrespect in North Texas, but I think they're much stronger. And if you don't go game plan correctly, it's going to be another 59. It's going to be lopsided. Whatever the score may be, it might be 60 something if you're not careful.
Yeah, and that's something that obviously you got to worry about being a first-year coach with the news transfer portal, with the fact this is only going to be the 4th game. So after that, it's that magic number where you can decide to hit that red shirt and then hit the portal the next year. Obviously, you don't want to talk about that being as a potential concern, but it's out there. So if you wind up losing big numbers for the 2nd week in a row to an in-state rival like UW, you have to worry about also making sure your locker room stays tight and you keep the confidence of your locker room, Gavin. You brought up the defense. My only biggest issue on the defense, and this is really not a lot to them because the turnovers kept happening over and over again, but I remember 2 of the biggest interceptions from Potter. The next play, North Texas scored. Like they just couldn't get off the field, or they couldn't stay on the field, I guess you should say. They just couldn't get anything stopped on that defensive side. That can't happen against the Huskies.
No, and we talked a little bit about time of possession. That is clear cut and simple right there. You got to find a way. The offense has to find a way to stay on the field, create first downs, and that's why I think it leans Zevi Eckhouse. He was able to march. He was able to create that, and that comes with experience.
Carter Paps, Landon Wright. I mean, there's still some good, fun weapons for this Washington State offense. Everything's got to go right against Washington, though. If they win this game, what are the 3 keys, do you think? If you can give me 3, 2's fine as well, for them to beat and, dare I say, upset the Washington Huskies on Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to defense. If it's Zevi, if we go with Zevi just has to find the end zone however he can via Carter Paps, which huge shout out for the Wichita kid. It was really cool seeing him, get that just true freshman from, coming from being committed to South Dakota State to now Wazoo. A huge shout out for him. I think his mom follows me on Twitter, so huge shout out for the Paps family. But I think the 3 keys are going to come down mainly defensively. I know that they are a high-powered offense. I know we're going to get a good defense from them. So if Zevi can just march down the field and score once a quarter, if we can get 4 touchdowns from this offense, then we got to get just as many stops. And I think that it's going to be tough, but I think that they can and are capable of doing it. They just have to go back to the drawing board and figure it out.
Again, 4:30 Pacific time, CBS, Washington taking on Washington State, the Apple Cup this weekend. We're going to have more for you on Pac-12 Daily before we get to this game because there's a lot to cover. We're going to dive deep and hopefully we have a better answer on who the quarterback is before Saturday's kickoff. Gavin, thanks for joining me on the Pac-12 Daily. Where can everyone find you?
You can either find myself at Gavin Hite 90 or our main page where you find the rest of the team at Up West Sports. It's tagged there at the bottom under my name, and then also on YouTube, Up West Sports. We cover Seattle Mariners, so if you're a Mariners fan, come on in, and then also Washington State.
Love it. And I'll put that link in the episode description below as well, so you can just click that and make that your next listen right after you're hearing the Pac-12 Daily. Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you.
Speaking of not knowing where to go, what does Oregon State do? We need to have a conversation about Trent Bray, and I think it might be long overdue. After him going now another loss after losing, it was a terrible loss to Texas Tech, 45-14. This is 3 losses in a row on the season. They're now 0-4 after losing the Cal, Fresno State, and Texas Tech. They can't get away from their own mistakes. They're causing issues on the defensive side and offensively. They're just not great. This team is in a bad spot. And oh, by the way, you got the Civil War coming up this week in Eugene against sixth-ranked Oregon, who might be the best team in college football right now. They look really good. Oregon does look really good. Oregon State did not play good against Texas Tech. Here's some of the notes I took during the game. First play of the game, false start. That was the first play of the game before the delay. There's a 2-hour, 24-minute weather delay, and really all it did was just delay the inevitable. That Oregon State was going to lose this game, and they absolutely did. It's unfortunate. Trent Bray just can't get past his own mistakes with this team. And I think he's lost the locker room. I think the confidence isn't there. It's just unfortunate because you get two false starts on the opening drive before you get to this weather delay. Then after the weather delay, Texas Tech just ran all over it, just took care of business. And it was very unfortunate. There were some plus sides. And I think it's deserved to show here. Oregon State, Thomas Collins, I think he had a great game. He had a good interception by Skylar Thomas in the end zone that would have stopped a 3-score game from Texas Tech if it wasn't for Malik Murphy throwing an interception just a few plays later. And then, of course, I think this is the most important thing that happened. David Wells might have made the catch of the season for not just Oregon State, but like the entire world of college football. It was unbelievable, the catch he made. If you need to check it out, go find it on social media. Just type in David Wells because he killed it. It was so amazing what he did. And it's not going to be talked about enough because they lost by 45-14. Now you go in and play this game a noon Pacific time against Oregon. And it's a tough game. Oregon just put up so many points against Oklahoma State the last 2 weeks ago. They played Northwestern just a few days ago as well. They won 34-14. This team is impressive, and they're going to show out in this Civil War. I mean, folks, it took till 45-0 to break the shutout. The touchdown by Caulfield broke the shutout, and they did make the extra point. So there are some small victories, even with this game that happened against Texas Tech and Lubbock. I mean, there's the smallest things you got to take, and that's where we're at this moment. So where do you go moving forward? We've already seen UCLA fire a coach. We've already seen Virginia Tech fire a coach. And really, UCLA is the one that you're really worried about the most because of the West Coast, because of the recruiting trail. They're probably going to have some of the same candidates if Oregon State decides to fire Trent Bray and move in that direction. They're going to be looking after guys like Will Stein, the offensive coordinator at Oregon. Is Oregon State able to be in that boat? Is Oregon State able to maybe persuade a guy like Will Stein to come over? I don't know. I don't know if that's possible, but we'll find out in the near future. Oregon State's in big trouble, and I don't think it gets any better this next week. When is their first win? That's really my biggest question on the board. You got Oregon this week, then you play Houston. Houston hasn't lost yet under Willie Fritz. Appalachian State, is that your first win? But that's a road trip to the East Coast. Then you come back and play Wake Forest and then Lafayette until you get ready to play Washington State one of the 2 times. Finish the season, Sam Houston at Tulsa and then at Washington State in Pullman. How many wins do you see on the table if you're Oregon State? As of right now, the way this team looks with Trent Bray in charge for the rest of the season, Malik Murphy under center, how many wins do you see on the table? Is it enough to make a bowl game? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Finally, let's get to Texas State on today's episode of the Pac-12 Daily. I think Texas State, although they did lose to Arizona State 34-15 this past weekend, has a lot to be excited about. This is a youth movement coming to Texas State that is going to be perfect when they join the Pac-12 next year, as long as they can continue to keep their coach, they can continue to have retention with their players, and so on. But what I really did like was the youth movement that is clear as day in Texas State for that team, for the Bobcats. Really like what I see from them. However, that youth movement also was probably one of the biggest reasons why they lost to Arizona State. It was probably the worst time they could play Arizona State. That team was looking for a win, looking for damage. And to be completely honest, I'm surprised it was only 34-15. Sam Leavitt was playing with vengeance. And even Coach Klein said, this is something that we were not expecting. Like, there was ways that he was doing things on the football field unbelievable. He said this, he did things he's never seen before. And of course, that makes it so hard to adjust if you're talking the trenches, the linebackers, or the secondary. And that's exactly what happened from Coach DJ Kine in this conversation. So what I would say when I'm looking at this Texas State game and how you can move forward, how you can still make sure you're still one of the top teams in the Sun Belt, which I think you are. I think there's going to be a lot of other teams that step forward. ODU starting to look good. What they did against Virginia Tech. Can Texas State still live up to the hype? I think they can. And if they can continue to build upon what they are building in this program, Brad Jackson seems to be like the guy. He seems to have what it takes to make this program step forward and be, dare I say, one of the top dogs in the Pac-12 next year if they can have this right retention, if him and some of the other players step forward and do exactly what they need to. Bo Sparks can stay around as well. That's going to be a tough task that are going to be looking after them, or excuse me, programs that are going to be looking after them. But I think they definitely can make it happen. On the offensive side, we'll start right with it. Brad Jackson's growth. He was shaky early, sure, definitely, but he settled in as the game went on, and he started reading the defenses better. He got more comfortable with that game speed. Game speed's something that you pay attention to when you're talking about younger players. And I think he did a good job, especially in the second half. That first half, they were outmatched, and you could tell the Arizona State was the better team. I mean, that's just plain and simple. But when you get to see the potential and the growth and everything moving forward in that second half, it just shows that, okay, maybe it's not there yet, but it's in the right path moving forward this season. The rushing attack did show some flashes. Of course, the short yards executions were really big as well. There's a lot of big things to be excited about for Texas State. So after getting that big win last week against UTSA, one of the most underrated rivalries in college football, in my opinion, I really love that rivalry, have for quite a long time. After getting that win, and then you kind of throw a nothing burger, if you will, against Arizona State, it's a perfect time to bounce back. And that's exactly what they're going to have to do next week, this coming week against Nicholls. Perfect time to do it. You're back at home, ESPN Plus, so you're not on national television. You don't have everybody on a national stage watching you. It's the perfect time for your young quarterback and his offense to get right, for the defensive secondary and everything to get in the right mood and make sure they can challenge the show that it was just really elite quarterback play from Arizona State, and this defense is still in a solid spot because the run defense looked good mostly. Outside of a couple big runs early, they did really good. So I think that you can bounce back very easily if you're Nicholls and if you're Texas State against Nicholls and get it done. Then you're right into Sun Belt play. You got Arkansas State, who played well against Iowa State. You got Troy, who put up some numbers well against Clemson. And you got a couple other good teams on that radar as well. Of course, James Madison's always there. South Alabama put up some decent points against Auburn this past week. The Sun Belt's not going to be a walk in the park, but I think Texas State can show what they're meant to be and maybe come out of the West and find themselves in the Sun Belt Championship this end of the season. And what a perfect way to end their tenure in the Sun Belt and get ready for Pac-12 play with a trip to the championship game. That could definitely happen with this roster. And if they can do that with this young roster, that just shows all the potential in the world, really just creates the floor, not the ceiling. The ceiling is endless for this team as long as they can keep their head coach and some of these offensive weapons around heading into the new season next year. Let me know your thoughts. I want to hear what you think about Texas State, because when you think of the new Pac-12, that's one of the teams that you don't think of enough because they just came in late. They're the only team out of the Sun Belt. It's not the Mountain West or Pac-12 teams that are already there. They're kind of the lone shark, if you will. But we're not going to treat them like the lone shark. We're covering them all the way, every step of the way here on the Pac-12 Daily. So if you're a Texas State fan, I want to hear from you. What did you think about that game against Arizona State? Compare against that game against UTSA. I know there's a completely different energy between those two games, the rivalry and then a ranked opponent. But, well, a once was ranked opponent in Arizona State. But let me hear from you. I'd love to hear that on this episode. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll be back here tomorrow with another one right here on the Pac-12 Daily.